Hey guys, as always, you are watching and listening to VaulSC. It's time to do another bat rep. This will be the first game of the new ITS season using the new ITS rules. We're going to be playing Biotechvore, also the first time playing this mission. The only thing that's changed between last season's Biotechvore and the new season's version is I think they've just played around with the objective amounts a little bit, and of course I believe it's possible now to use kidnapping as one of the classifieds. Playing Combined Army up against PanO, and interestingly, this game is going to involve the new rule that says that if you have a single order group, you can't spend a command token to strip them of 2 orders or to restrict them to 1 command token at the start of the game. So combined against PanO, I have to build a list for this, and we'll just have a quick talk about the list that I'm going to be running for this one. Brand new Caronted. I don't know whether you say Charonted or Caronted. I guess we could Google it and find out, because it's an elite trooper based on Charon or Charon of the mythology. In my photos, I just want to show you guys the little conversion I've done of my little alien queen here. This is based on the AVP, Aliens vs Predator, The Hunt Begins range. I initially stuck a Tyranid arm on it, but it looks way too big, so you can see there that it's just a monstrosity. It's going to be really hard to position around the table, and that's just a post-human I've got for my LF for scale. So I read it. You can see the little pile of bits, box, 200 parts there for me to choose from, but I ended up going with a slightly more tasteful, but still overblown. It's still really much larger than it should be, really, for infinity proportions. And the other thing as well is that the actual silhouette of this model S6 only comes to around about here. So it's a bit oversized, but it kind of looks cool, and the Caronta that we've got at the moment needs a bit of a resculpt. So getting into it, yeah, so the table is as follows. Remember, you've got the biotech line, so you've got an 8-inch deployment zone here, and you've got to get beyond this line to get out of it, otherwise you get burned by the biotech virus. And my opponent, well, that's the most terrible line ever, is around about there. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's go back to the army list. So, Caronted. I like the profile with the HMG MSV3 the most. Like, I think that has the most application, but I'm going for the hacking device plus for this game. And the reason why is because the mission requires you to move towards the middle of the table, where you'll be, in a lot more danger. So being able to go into impersonation level 1 is going to be quite important. And with both sides being forced to the middle of the table, hacking is going to become a bit more relevant because you're going to be in range more often. And I was suspicious that my opponent would actually try to use models that are hackable, that are more expensive, because they would actually be more applicable in this mission. So that's why I have gone for the hacking device plus version. It also gives you that convenience of being able to use your assisted fire, support wear stuff with your lieutenant order, and you don't have to spend extra points on a hacker elsewhere on the list because you've got a hacker already. For Dacherats, I normally take 2, but this mission puts efficiency at a premium. If you get free orders, impetuous, moving out of your deployment zone without having to spend coordinated orders, that really makes life a lot easier. Also, they have smoke, so that makes it even better for actually covering the advance out of your deployment zone, which is really important for the mission. They have mimetism, which makes them more likely to survive as they're running out. So when they're dodging things with smoke, they're a bit more effective at doing that against incoming shooting than, say, Gazimotiwa or Shaolin monks are. And finally, with both armies being squashed into the center line, close combat's going to come up more often, and that's what these guys do best. The single Unidron Fort Observer, because Fort Observer gives me Flash Pulse, quite important, and if the Caronta dies, the Willpower 16 goes out onto the Unidron through Mimetism, not Mimetism, Mnemonica. The Doctor, very important for classifieds. The classifieds are actually worth a fair bit of points in this mission if you get more than your opponent. But also, it's about stuff that survives, and I think the Doctor Worm is going to be critical for reviving things if that comes up. Echidrons, don't love them because they are going to take 2 BTS saves if they're still within the zone, but at least they have BTS 6, and they're very cheap cheerleaders at the same time. And the Noctifer, of course, really love this guy because, first of all, Chaz Fasti, you don't get the points for him if he goes unconscious, for example. So if he dies outside of the biotech zone, you might not have to give up the points for him for your opponent. Also, he's not having to take the BTS save while he's in hidden deployment, and your opponent's going to be spending more time initially moving out of their zone than shooting you, so if you're shooting back at them, the arrow is going to be even more powerful than usual. The Predators, hopefully the Datrats lay a cloud of smoke. The Predators can easily and effectively move with their climbing plus and 6 speed out of the biotech zone. The Shrouded has a 45% chance of deploying out of your deployment zone and not having to move. But either way, he's got a multi-sniper rifle to basically provide a similar role as the Noctifier, just shooting things as they leave the enemy deployment zone. R-Drone and Q-Drone are quite fast, so hopefully they will help me with my hacking game and move out of the zone. Because the Carotid is using a shorter range plasma rifle, I have picked the HMG Q-Drone, whereas if I was taking the HMG Carotid, I take the plasma rifle Q-Drone, just so I've got both sort of roles covered. There's a bit too much redundancy if I've got them both with the same kind of gun. The Imatron, apparently, the rules say the confused deployment aspect of Biotechvore applies to troopers. The Imatron is not a trooper, so unless I've missed something, he gets to basically just roll normally to end up outside of the biotech zone. So that's pretty good. So with that in mind, let's talk about the actual game. I've decided to use the club terrain or the store terrain to combine with my my setup to create a bit more of a bit of a novel table that we don't normally sort of use. My HVT is down here, mind you, and his HVT is, in fact, I can't remember where he put it. I'm not too sure if it was actually in this particular photo. But as you can see, we've actually dotted out the red pebbles to be where he needs to clear. I won the lieutenant role thanks to Willpower 16, and I've chosen specifically to go second, and I did that just in the off chance he's not playing a 10 order list, because if you are able to spend your command token to restrict them to only using one command token of their own their first turn, it guarantees you some Biotechvore kills because they just don't have enough orders to move everything out of the zone effectively. So he's got a Yotam here and everything. We'll have a better look at some of the deployment in the future photos, but I'm having to deploy behind the blue marks and get past the red marks here. I've got a Noctifer and hidden deployment on that particular spot there, which we'll have a look at. So there's my photograph of the Noctifer hidden deployment, just taking that long diagonal lane, which you'll eventually get to use. Dr. Worm behind the prone behind the thing. So I'm deploying first and going second, not always wonderful. So you can see right hand flank, we've got the got Dr. Worm there and the Predator, a couple of Datrats to move up and lay down the smoke when they eventually start moving out. Through to the middle, you can see the Carotid plasma rifle here, along with the third Datrat and the R-Drone, just providing a little bit of a flash pulse arrow. The big man himself, Carotid, backed up by the Q-Drone HMG, hanging out towards the middle. On the left-hand side, obviously you got this Datrat side moving out this way, throwing smoke, hopefully blocking off any aero zones there, allowing all of these troopers to move through around into safety with coordinated orders. My Shrouded has failed his physical check to deploy elsewhere, unfortunately, so he's deploying here, but this is going to give him the chance to shoot along this long line here, which is actually going to be quite a significant one. So not too unhappy with deployment, although it's not wonderful. The Imatron fails its role, so scatters over to this point here. It's going to be in the middle of my opponent's army, so he's going to be able to shoot that right off the bat. But on his side, he's got a Bulleteer, Bounty Hunter, Sniper Rifle, which rolls a smoke grenade straight away, so the perfect role for this mission. He's running Joan of Arc, so the Bounty Hunter is not irregular for this mission, it will be regular. TR bot and this model here, which usually represents his HVT, is going to be a Tech B for this one. And then towards the middle, Hospitalia Doctor, Krakot with SMG. So you can see those guys there. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 models deployed here from this side. And then he's got the mighty Yotam, along with a engineer backing him up on that side. And eventually we get our reserve model, which is, of course, Joan of Arc. And then his HVT is this model here. So looking really cool. I really like this train, which is not really designed for Infinity, but it gives our particular table a bit more of a rustic feel, and that's a bit more unusual for my kind of table setup. So a bit of a break, a bit of a change. So first action of the game, Krakot Renegade runs up the stairs out of the biotech zone. He also was able to pass a physical check for actually using for deployment level 1, so that worked very well. Note that because he's running a single order list, I'm not allowed to spend a command token to produce his orders or prevent him from using more than one command token. I would have loved to have been able to do that, but didn't work this time, so a bit of a harder game. Sorry, he's got a war core, I think we forgot to mention as well. So Bounty Hunter moves forward, throws the smoke, fails the fizz check, has another go at it, and does pass the second time around with some coordinated orders, especially thanks to Joan's lieutenant order. Joan, the Yotum, and the engineer just piling along the flank, and unfortunately I've got no long aero lines to be able to get at them. On his other side here, Bulleteer moves around, is able to fire at the Datcharatsa, but remember it's 12 dice on 12 to hit on 4 dice, I meant, because +3 for range, -3 for the mimetism, and the Datcharatsa is hitting on a 17. So luckily I managed to plant the smoke down rather than dying, so that was quite fortunate. Means I can save my entire flank, really. Having said that, I didn't expect too much stuff to die, because he's going to have to be spending more orders getting out of his zone than he is just ramboing around, otherwise he'll take losses at the end of his turn. Elsewhere, if I can just draw this in, here is the position of the Yotum, and there is actually a shallow line through here, and it barely just grazes the side of the Datcharatsa here with his prone position, and then later the Yotum can keep on coming around and draw another line across here at this Datcharatsa and this flashball spot. So he's going to be able to do a fair bit of shooting if he wants to, but again, limited orders. So a very blurry photo, but the Datcharatsa successfully throws down a smoke grenade and beats the Yotum, which was again quite lucky. So Yotum trying to get in there to hit the flash pulse spot, comes in range of the Datcharatsa and the flash pulse and splits his burst, but I think at some point ends up getting blinded by the flash pulse spot. And remember, he's out in the open, so they get +3, and he's having to shoot at mimetism and behind cover, so it's not wonderful once you're splitting burst. Elsewhere, you might notice in this photograph, if I move my head out of the way, that the doctor, this is the Hospitalia doctor, is moving out here, but there's the shrouded sniper in the distance who does have a direct line across here. So he does get shot and passes one of his saves from the double action round and fails the other one, so it goes down to 1 wound. The Tech B and the machine here are fine though, because they're not in line of sight of anybody yet. So we've got a wound on our little doctor friend, and that's how that goes. At some point he decides to spend a short skill just killing my my Imatron as well, since it's on his side of the table, why not? And then repositioning. One thing I found really annoying is that he moved his TR bot around to engage my sniper. My sniper needing, I mean, this out in the open as well, sniper needing something like 15 to hit, something ridiculous, and he needs like 8s on 4 dice, so it could have gone either way, but he rolled 2 crits, which kind of annoyed me, because it meant that I didn't even get to use Auto Medkit or Shazvasti, both rules that model has. So if I had passed even one of them, I might have been able to Auto Medkit myself and actually survive and get out of there. Now, Yotum and Joan and the engineer continuing to move around. So the Yotum is just putting himself into this little corner here where he's got a slight angle past this building here, but a lot of it is blocked off. So to my extreme right-hand flank, he doesn't have a line. Joan is planning on coming prone behind the set of boxes here, and the engineer just getting a very thin line across past the train. The Tech B, the TR bot, and the Krakot all just hanging around the staircase, and there's an ad board here blocking off line of sight to them from my hidden missile launcher. Really nice photo here with the train and with Joan hanging out. So this is their sort of final position, and you can see the TR bot in the distance. But yeah, quite like this this photo. If we take away my video for my face for a second and just admire the picture, looks really good. Okay, so once the TR bot decides to get greedy and move around to get line of sight to, I think, one of my Echidrons or something like that, Because it was his last order, I've decided to use the Noctifier at this point to shoot down along the line. And the reason I've had to wait for order number 10 is that if it was order number 9, he could spend his last order moving the Yotum around to shoot at the Noctifer. And the Noctifer wouldn't have had a cover, and his shock rounds would have put me straight to the grave. So with this little surprise missile here, luckily I do manage to beat the TR bot and destroy him. So that's something at least. And it puts the Noctifer on the field to generate an order in case I want to use it elsewhere. Although having said that, I'll probably just use it on him because he needs to get out of the zone, right? Okay, so finally my turn. I've taken a few casualties. A couple of casualties at least. I've lost at least one Datcharat side and I lost the Shrouded Sniper Rifle. So, quite crucially, I needed to move up with my Datcharatsa here, lay smoke down, and allow everybody else to come across, but he's now positioned the Yotum in such a way that there is actually a line along here. So he does actually get shot by the Yotum and the Bulleteer as he moves through, and despite hitting on a 17 for, well, needing a 17 for a smoke, he fails it and dies, so that whole flank really is going to be a tough one for me to get to. But one of my backup plans here is that I've got that Noctifier in play, and although this photo doesn't show it, the sniper here does actually have a line along the other side of the battlefield to where my Noctifier is. So if the Noctifer can beat the Bounty Hunter in a shootout, you'd think he would with TO camo, the template is actually going to clip the Bulleteer as well and blow it up as well, if I'm lucky. So things haven't started off well this particular turn, and I did get a little bit unlucky to lose the Shrouded last turn, but I also passed a couple of really important smoke dodges earlier on, so I have at least that to go on. Preta now moving around here. So Preta moves across here and luckily does avoid the Yotum. Goes dogged because of the Bulleteer shooting me. What that's going to allow me to do is actually use my irregular order to move up and hit these guys with the chain rifle and hopefully knock them out. That does what happens later in the turn, but I only get the Bulleteer with the chain rifle, not the Bounty Hunter, unfortunately. So I am going to have to rely on the Noctifier for that one. On the right-hand flank, got the Datcharatsa moving up, putting smoke down so that they don't immediately just run into line of sight of the Yotum or the sniper rifle, because they don't particularly like those arrows. So we've had a couple of different smokes go off. So one of them's moved up here, the other one's moved along here, and one of them's put his sort of smoke down here, and this guy sort of lobbed his over here onto that sort of angle there, if you guys can make sense of that little image. What that does is it allows me to push across with my Preta to avoid the sniper rifle over here, and ultimately I'll be able to move the Noctifier up here to this particular point here and pull around the cover, and there's going to be a really small sliver across the Bounty Hunter who's actually up at this spot here. There's going to be a real small sliver of line across here where I'll be able to actually locate, I'll actually be able to position my Noctifer at this point, so gaining cover and then just siding across to the point where I can fire across the flank onto the Bounty Hunter. So that's going to be one of the plans there. And luckily the Yotum doesn't quite get line across. The Yotum's got a line more along this angle here. So there's some opportunity. Spending some coordinated orders, I'm now moving up here with the Q drone, and also up here with the R drone. And the thinking here is that I might be able to coordinate by moving the Q drone around here and shooting at the Yotum, while also moving the R drone over here into cover, and he'll be forced to split his burst between either, or split his shot between the R drone or the Q drone. If he shoots the R drone, well, it's close range with mimetism, he might miss, and he's going to get shot by the HMG. Not that that'll do too much. But if he shoots the Q drone, well, he might lose that anyway, and the R drone will then be able to allow me to hack through the repeater. The problem with this strategy here, though, is that I move straight into the line that the Bounty Hunter is currently sort of controlling. So the Noctifier is going to have to actually kick in first and get that kill before I can make this play. Elsewhere, you know, you've got your Preta, which does manage to kill the Bulleteer, but I've only got one order left in this group. This is a secondary group, and I need that order to actually be spent on the R drone so I can get it in range for the Caronta to hack the Yotum. So unfortunately, this guy's stranded and can't really do much else. I mean, I could use him to go and actually try and take out the Bounty Hunter, but the chances of that happening aren't particularly high, so I thought I'd rather rely on the Noctifer. So Noctifer moses on up here and comes around to the edge here. I've already put down another smoke grenade just to help block off the Yotum's line of sight, but I've deliberately left a gap. In fact, I've drawn that really poorly. you can see where the smoke grenade is, right? So if you look carefully where that is and carefully where this is, although the photo isn't perfect for this job, there is a line which comes through here. I'm bad at drawing straight lines with my mouse pointer, by the way. There is a line between the smoke grenades which the Noctifier will be able to make use of to only get line of sight to that sniper. So when we actually do that, Noctifier comes in, has a go at it, and misses, sadly, and the bounty hunter, I think, managed to crack him, but I passed the armor save. So deciding to do it again, moving around, but dying. So that was really annoying. Wasn't happy with that turnout at all, was really quite annoyed. So this time I decided to move up with the Q drone and the R drone in a coordinated order, and basically get shot by the Yotum and by the sniper rifle, and try to at least take out the sniper rifle with the Q drone, but that didn't work either. So losing the Q drone as well in my own active turn. So game going kind of badly at this point. You'll notice a new smoke grenade there. Obviously the Datrats, I had quite a few orders just to plant a lot of smoke grenades around in exactly the right places. Luckily managing to pass those checks, but all I've really achieved here is I've managed to get the R drone into range of the Yotum, but I've lost my Shrouded, I've lost my Noctifer, I've lost my Q drone, I've lost like 2 Datrats now, I'm losing a Predator, so game's going really badly at this point. Right, so with the R drone now in range, luck sort of swings back to me a bit by allowing me to actually possess the Yotum. Now, total control, I've got to, beat the Yotum's willpower with my willpower 16, so that is relatively likely. And then he's got to pass 2 armor saves with BTS 9, but beating a 16, so he needs 8 or more, I think, on 2 dice. So failing one of them isn't actually too unlikely, but he does fail on the first go, so the Yotum is now possessed. What this allows me to do is pull around the side. Remember, his speed goes down to 4/4 while possessed. Joan and the engineer both dodge, so rather than blast them with the gun, which isn't going to do too much damage to Joan, I decided to shoot the flamethrower in the hopes of actually inflicting a bit of damage, and that did manage to kill the engineer, but Joan has survived. So that's the first short skill with the Yotum. Bear in mind, guys, I'm sacrificing a lot of my army here because every order I spend on this is going to prevent me from getting out of my own deployment zone. But quite importantly, the Yotum can now be moved back here. My whole army can shunt forward, and I've got this Datratsa here, this Predator, and this R drone all in base contact with the Yotum. So if he takes him back with his remaining command token in his turn, then he's just stuck in close combat. If he shoots into close combat, well, chances are the Yotum's going to suck up some of those hits anyway. If he moves the Yotum at all, it's going to get hacked, and if Joan can come around there, she's going to get hacked through the R drone as well. So at least this is something, and the biotech zone is around about here. So I've managed to get everybody out of the way. There's even an Echidron which has moved up over here. The lieutenant here is going to take a biotech save, but she's got BTS 5 and she's got 3 wounds. I've decided to let her take it. But elsewhere on the table, I've got another Echidron and a Unidron, which both die at this point. So a lot of carnage. I'm definitely losing right now, but if he can't get a lot of work done, and if the Yotum dies as it's likely to in the long run, then I might be able to swing the game back. So that's how we end up. In his turn, he is able to use Impetuous to come down here with his Krakot. Let's grab a nice red here. The Yotum obviously is in combat, but he has decided to use a command token to bring him back to his side. If he hadn't, that would have meant that the Yotum can actually provide arrows during his turn, which is not really ideal for him. So he can go around and pick these guys off one by one, but he'd have to deal with the Yotum for another turn, which I can see why you wouldn't really want to do that. So there we are. Joan is moving towards the combat. I pointed out that I've got a repeater there, but he pointed out that he's still got stealth from her martial arts, so she can actually move around here using stealth, and since the Carontid can't see her, I'm only going to be able to use Gotcha at the point where Isolation is probably even better by the time she actually starts making attacks and comes out of stealth. So that's what's happening there, but she's got to be very careful. So, there she is there down the bottom of the picture. That's where we've ended up. I've also got an Echidron which can try and hit her with the Flash Pulse, but that doesn't succeed. Luckily, this ad board here is blocking line of sight to the Carontid, otherwise I'd get shot to bits by Joan's multi-rifle. So what he decides to do is he makes a play where he moves his Hospitalia Knight around through the middle of the battlefield, killing my Ichadron in the process. The Ichadron doesn't get to I don't get to hack this guy because the even though I've got a repeater there and the Trontid's there, he can actually shoot the Ichadron straight away, so that didn't quite work out. So I managed to do that. He has taken a wound from the sniper rifle earlier, but by the end of this turn, he's walked around here successfully and gets in range of the Carontid. So you can see him here moving to the side of the crate. I'm able to hack him at the same time he shoots me. I think I took a single shot from the shooting, and he ends up there. In the meantime, Jones moving forward and ends up, I think, getting into combat. No, she just ends up standing here and decides to just shoot, I think, one of my troops, one of my Ichadrons or something like that, without getting in range. No, she doesn't even shoot. She just moves a bit closer, is what she does. She just decides not to get hacked, which is wise. So my turn. In fact, I think this is the first part of my turn rather than Joan moving. The good thing about the scenario with me being in contact with the Jotun is that I've got 3 things which can attack the Jotun which are impetuous, so I don't have to spend any orders there. So Dacheratse, Martial Arts level 3, they've got 3 people helping them. The Jotun does get destroyed pretty reliably here with 3 close combat specialists just chomping on him. So that's the Jotun dead. When we eventually move over to attack Joan with one of the other guys, I believe she just engages them or something like that. So we end up with a situation where these guys are locked in combat. That's a good thing because it now allows me to go in for hacking whenever I want. I could also send models in to help her out. The problem at this stage, and this is where the game got really interesting, is that I had a choice to make. I'm very low on orders as well. Like, I've only got 4 or 5 orders to use total after Impetuous. So I could send some of my models to kill Joan and make his army loss of lieutenant, right? I can do that. If I do that though, I'm in combat with a Santiago, not a Hospitalia Knight, so chances are he's got frenzy and he's got a regular order he'll be able to spend on himself, which could kill my lieutenant. Now, if I lose my lieutenant as well, chances are he'd end up with more points at the end of the game. One other really interesting factor is that he'd forgotten with his Hospitalia Knight that when he came around and ended in combat with my Carontid, he had to take a BTS save for being in my deployment zone, and he'd already been shot by the sniper rifle, so he luckily passed the BTS save, but that mistake could have really cost him. It could have meant that we ended the game, well, I start my second turn basically with Joan being hacked, immobilized, and she gets clobbered by 2 Dacheratse and a Preta. But unfortunately for me, that didn't end up happening. So what I have to do here is try and save my lieutenant while, not really putting much resources into killing his lieutenant, because my lieutenant's worth about 20 more points than his is. So with this in mind, I'm going to leave Joan tied up in close combat, and the other Dacheratse is going to leave. He starts here and he walks across here towards the close combat you can see pictured there. But sadly, it means that there's a bounty hunter still alive which gets to shoot him. Now, I have to hope for the best here. I have to take a risk. I've got to get this smoke off so it can actually jam up this region, so I can spend my remaining 2 orders, and that's literally all I've got left to go over there and help out the Carontid. Luckily, does manage to get the smoke off, so the second order moves right around here, and I'm able to use the last order just to pile into close combat. Again, this is another risk because I can quite easily lose the close combat round against the knight. It's not too unlikely. I mean, I'm martial arts 3, he's martial arts 1 is what's being used there. I could use 4, but 1's better because I'm already getting the extra dice from the Carontid helping me out. So, all things considered, 2 dice against 1, and my close combat stat works out to be a fair bit higher than his after the abilities are totaled. The Dacheratse thankfully does win this close combat brawl and kills him. But again, end of turn, Carontid takes another BTS save, Dacheratse takes another BTS save and dies, so models dropping like flies because we haven't got out of the deployment zone, which is pretty awkward. I do have 2 orders left, a regular and irregular, for this Preta, and what it's able to do is head up the board here and shoot its chain rifle and to try and take out the Tech B and the Krakow, but unsuccessful at doing that. I could also have moved it in range of attacking Joan, but even with the additional dice in close combat, martial arts level 3 is going to make too much of a difference there, so I think I would have just been wasting the Preta in that particular situation. Here it is here, with the last order just moving around, but unfortunately Krakot engages, avoids the chain rifle blast, and the Tech B also manages to survive. So, what we have happening here in his final turn is a situation where the Krakot attacks with the chest mine directly in close combat. The Korontid fires into the close combat because I want to destroy him, and I'm not too worried about the Predator. And sadly, the Predator fails to beat the Datrats, the Predator fails to beat the Krakot in close combat, and the Korontid completely misses. So we end up with a situation where he gets a kill and nothing happens on the other side. What happens next is that the Krakot moves out now and faces a plasma rifle shot from the Korontid, and this time he does get destroyed. So in this particular instance, the odds were a bit more in my favor against his SMG at that range. So that's good. What he's doing now is he's moving around with his bounty hunter, and the plan here is for him to really box in my Korontid. He's trying to get line of sight so he gets a line along there. So if my Korontid leaves, my Korontid is directly behind this crate here. So if my Korontid goes around this side, he's going to get shot. If he goes around this side, he's going to get shot. And his plan is just to force me to take AROs as I try to leave my deployment zone. Because in the last turn, if I leave any models in the deployment zone, they're just gone for good. They don't get to make any saves or anything like that. So this is reasonably wise play. At the same time, I've got an Echidron dead, but he's moved into position correctly. Next up, Joan does manage to beat the Krakot, especially since because I think that he shot into close combat with a sniper rifle against the Krakot and did manage to kill him. I think he could afford to do that because Joan's got 3 wounds. She's much more likely to survive. So Joan can now move out here and try to box in this Korontid, if not kill it outright. So we end up with a position where Joan moves in to attack, shoots her multi-rifle and strips another wound off me. She could have killed me outright, to be honest, with her last order, but she does run out of orders in a position where Joan has line of sight to the Korontid, so I'm going to have to actually get through another round of her no matter what. And if I move either side of this crate, the bounty hunter is actually going to take me out because the bounty hunter is sitting up here. So in my last turn, I've literally got like 2 regular orders and a lieutenant's order. The only plan I could come up with was to move the Korontid to the right, and that stays out of line of sight of the bounty hunter initially. I have one face-to-face roll between the Korontid and Joan, like right across here, but I end in a position where I'm out of line of sight of Joan and the bounty hunter. That's one order. I've got 2 left. The second order is going to have to be Cybermask, and it's going to have to pass in a 16, otherwise I'm stuffed. Otherwise I have to take 2 AROs, basically. And then the third order, if I've passed it, will get into the middle of the zone, preventing my lieutenant from dying. And luckily what happened is that I did avoid being killed outright by Joan's double-action ARO. And I did pass the Cybermask roll, and that has allowed me to move out of the zone, and you can see the impersonation marker in the middle of the table. Neither of us managed to complete any classifieds at all, so that hasn't impacted. He's only got Joan and a bounty hunter, and I think a Tech B left alive. So I think it was 74 points he came up with that he's got left. I've got a Korontid, I think an R-drone, and Dr. Worm, and that's all I've got left, which is about 100 and something, between 100 and 110. So I've killed more army points than he has, and I have more army points left alive in the bracket, so it was a 5-0 victory to combined army. I thought I'd lost that game after that first turn, which was really dismal, and all things considered, I probably would have changed a couple of things about my list, but it ended up being a victory. Maybe. The reason I say maybe is that I'm not sure if I've won that game, and what really it comes down to is what you guys think of the baggage rule. There was a thread recently, and I'll put the link to it in my video description in case you want to go on the forums and necromancy this thread. But I personally don't know what the ruling is, and there hasn't been an FAQ on errata. People disagree about it. The whole issue is whether baggage affects victory points. Sorry, we know it affects victory points. It's about whether it affects killed army points or not. So the rules for Biotechvore say if you have killed more army points than your opponent, then you get extra 3 objective points, and that's the difference between winning and losing. Obviously the brackets matter as well, but it's mainly the 3 objective points that you get out of that. So has my opponent killed more army points, considering that if the 2 Echidrons which were killed that game give him another 40 points worth of army points killed? Now the rules for baggage specifically say victory points, so do we count victory points for that purpose? We know for a fact that victory points are counted in quadrant control, where you add up how many victory points you have in a particular area, and the Echidrons count towards that. And we also know that victory points matter when you're working out retreat. It's very, very explicit on page 72 of HSN3. Now, some people on the forums think that there's no reason why army points and victory points aren't the same. Like, there's no argument for them not being distinguished, whereas other people think that they are distinguishable. So let's have a look at what people are saying. Matamori is not convinced that that's the case because victory points and army points aren't quite the same thing. Baggage contains nothing about when the bot dies other than for retreat, and baggage is specifically called out as adding their victory points to dominating zones. So there you go. Solcan also thinks that it should be a double-edged sword because in the end of standing game, both players compare their victory points. Victory points are players' surviving troops points, therefore, no-brainer, you add it to surviving troops points if that's the case. Cole says, some scenarios like Annihilation, and this is like Annihilation essentially, reference killing more army points with no clear indication as to whether army points are victory points, so there is that distinction there. Right, so Matamori makes a point of logic here. Obviously, if an American is a person, that doesn't mean any person's American, if you see what I mean. Yeah, I can see what that means, so just because that counts as victory points doesn't mean it counts as kill points. There's no logical step there. Then DeBorder, as always, comes in with his 50 cents. So he's saying that victory points and army points are different things. One is points surviving, and the other one is points you've killed. So there's nowhere it actually says in baggage that they add to the amount killed. You only add it to victory points, so it's not a double-edged sword. That's his opinion there. Can't see anything backing that up. Hakimantaro. Okay. Here's a really interesting point. He mentions that Plebeian, who brought this up at Interplanetario, thinks that the rule for baggage turns off when you die. So that's an interesting take on it. I don't know if that's correct or not, but yeah, it's automatic equipment. But for example, some other models have automatic equipment which shut off, like Mimetism and ODD, I believe, is automatic, but it shuts off when you die. So an argument could be made that baggage also shuts off when you die. So a dead model, baggage doesn't count in the same way that if you're working out end game points, obviously you don't add the 20 points to working out retreat if your Echidron's dead. But if it's been killed for the purposes of adding up points at the end of the game, then baggage doesn't count. So there's an argument that could be made there. I don't know if that argument is good enough. I do accept that it is an argument, but I don't know whether we should be moved by that or not. Yeah, I encourage you guys to read through these rules. I think I would have lost 3-2 if we are counting it. I win 5-0 if we're not counting it. But there's only one page of this thread, and there was never any consensus. Nobody really ever admitted that the other side was right here. We've just got some people who think it's one way, some people who think it's the other way. So if you guys want to chime in with any erratas or FAQs that you've found, or if you feel like you can overrule the arguments made by these guys, then so be it. But regardless, had a fun game. Didn't feel like I played perfectly. Didn't really love my list at the end of the day. I think some things could have been changed, and maybe going first would have been better, all things considered. But it was definitely an interesting and fun game, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. So we'll see you guys next time.